This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. We have been talking these past 2 days about high-speed internet for our series Breaking Ground. That's as the federal government rolls out the $42 billion BEAD program. That's Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And we have focused on the supply chain. And we're going to wrap things up today in a place that sticks out for being ahead of the curve. We left Frankfort and drove about 2 hours southeast, up into the Appalachian Mountains. There are big stretches of this drive where it's just this windy, narrow, 2-lane highway surrounded by trees and mountains and limestone. Eventually, we got to the town of McKee, population as of the 2020 census, 803. We're here because McKee did with broadband what the federal government is trying to do now 10 years ago. McKee's had every home and every business connected to fiber internet since 2014. Keith Gabbard is the CEO of the People's Rural Telephone Cooperative, PRTC. His office has a ton of computer and TV screens as well, monitoring the various offices and warehouses. There's a big old-school wraparound desk and a bunch of antique phones, the business that PRTC started in. In his almost 5 decades at PRTC, Keith has seen it go from just a telephone cooperative to a business that does television and internet services now, too. First, they did dial-up, and then DSL.
We were constantly having to try to rebuild and upgrade because it just wouldn't get in the speeds DSL wasn't that people wanted. And so 2008, we decided, we'd heard a little bit about fiber to the home. We thought we're going to borrow. We had always borrowed from USDA or US. So we borrowed $20 million to start a fiber-to-the-home system in part of our area.
And you were super early. 2008 is crazy early to be doing fiber, especially out here.
Well, yeah, we were one of the first in Kentucky for sure, and one of the first in the country. So that was $45 million. We thought we could do both of our whole counties with that, but it took about $5 million more, and we used our own capital for that. So it was $50 million to do both counties.
The combined population of the 2 counties that PRTC serves is about 18,000. And again, it cost $50 million to connect them all 10 years ago.
The thing about stringing wire out here is that you can go, well, maybe not miles, but you can go a long way without seeing more than 2 or 3 homes in 2 or 3 places, right? The density just isn't there. So make that make sense.
Well, partly the fact that, part of this was grant money helped. Certainly wasn't all grant money. But, we don't have to make big profits. We're a nonprofit. So if we can break even and in the long run provide the services our people need, that's what we're about. And we just felt like this would be a game changer for our community. I don't think we realized how much of a game changer, though.
I need you to describe for people who haven't seen it the terrain around here, because that's the thing.
Yeah, we have a lot of mountains, a lot of rock. We're not able to bury much of our cable. Most of it's aerial just because of the rock. A lot of forest, a lot of trees, a lot more trees than there are people in homes.
Give me a for instance on how hard it is to lay fiber around here.
Well, we got a little notoriety when one of our contractors was using a mule to go up a mountain to pull the fiber on the poles. And I think the irony of that caught a lot of people's attention because, using a mule to do this state-of-the-art fiber, we don't use that as much anymore. We use 4-wheelers or ATVs or things like that. But the mountains here are up and down, and you have to go across them, and you have to go across the valleys and up and down the mountains. That's where the people live.
Jackson County is exactly the kind of place we were talking about yesterday with Chip Spann from the Commerce Department, where installing fiber is really hard and really expensive. It's why a lot of companies haven't invested to connect rural America to fiber internet.
Do you have a sense, I'm sure you do actually, an exact sense of what it cost you per mile to string all that fiber?
Yeah, it was about $50,000 a mile at that time. Now it's more like $70,000 to $100,000 a mile.
Yeah.
And that $50,000 took into account that we already had the buildings, some of the electronics, the poles, all that infrastructure was already in place.
PRTC is expanding its coverage into other counties nearby, places where they're not already the phone company that owns the utility poles. That makes a difference. It means the whole process costs more and takes more time. It means PRTC is going to need to hire more. And to get it all done, they're probably going to apply for BEAD funding to finish those builds, sending their bids to Macon Sanfus, who we talked to yesterday at the state broadband office.
Where would this company be without federal money?
Well, we started in 1950 borrowing money from the federal government, so I don't know that there would be a company without federal money. You know, we've borrowed money from them from day one, and hundreds of millions of dollars from them over the years.
Couldn't have done it without the feds.
No, I don't see how.
This is one small example of government in this economy changing one small rural area of Kentucky. It's also a story about how Keith and PRTC used a patchwork of grants and loans from 15 years ago that doesn't compare to the $42 billion BEAD dollars available today.
What did it do for the people of this county to have this service?
You know, I grew up in this county, and of course people are always going to complain about what you don't have. And we always complained about, okay, we don't have a 4-lane highway, we don't have a hospital, we don't have a college, we don't have a Walmart. But now we have something that not a lot have, and it's high-quality broadband, gigabit-capable broadband in the middle of nowhere. And it's just allowed, from economic development standpoint, an education standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint, you know, we just seen all kinds of things improve and change and allow our people to do things not only just as good as our neighboring towns that are bigger, but even better. I was taught early in life to try to give back to your community. And it's very rewarding to me. I'm very passionate about that. I know that this company is not the one thing that makes everything wonderful here, but we play a role.
There is, of course, a whole team of PRTC employees who get this broadband up and running. But the thing about policy changes and long-term investments like this is that at the end of the day, it's not about who's in the White House. It's about the people on the ground doing the work. It's Tracy Overcash and the crew at Prismian scaling up fiber and cable production. It's Chip and Megan driving around the state of Kentucky trying to find every location that needs broadband. And it's Matt and Keith and small companies you have never heard of like PRTC doing what they can to improve their communities. Work being done now in the hopes the investments pay off later.